Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Perspective on Global Television. It is another wonderful time again for us to talk about things happening from the United States, especially the trade tariff from the United States, even though it's been paused for a while. We need to do a little assessment and a review of what will really happen to the Nigerian economy if that is actually implemented. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo, and of course, I have my guest joining me on the program today. Emmanuel Ozoemena is an international relations expert, and he's with me on the program today as we discuss the impact of the United States trade tariff on the Nigerian economy. So many thanks for joining us today on the program.
Yeah, thank you, Ramsey.
Well, there was a lot of how do I put it? I'm looking for a particular word to use. Reactions coming from different countries because of Donald Trump's trade tariff, including Nigeria, as a matter of fact, because no country was left out of the tariff. I know that of China was very loud. You know why? Because of the competition and the existing, feud between the United States and, of course, China. On the whole, what do you think about the tariff before we come talk about its impact on the Nigerian economy?
Well, I think for me, the tariff, when Donald Trump was campaigning, I followed him closely, incidentally, during the election, and one of his key talking point was on the tariff. He feels the tariff is not in the favor of the United States, that previous U.S. leaders haven't paid attention to reviewing the tariff. He feels America is just changed, and that was a talking point. I also believe that was one of the reasons he got elected. And on the eve of his election, he spoke about it, he was clear about it. In fact, he started the tariff with Canada and Mexico, and you saw the reaction quickly. Canada, the Mexican president coming over to engage him, engaged the U.S. government, quickly agreeing that they were going to put about 10,000, military men and women on the borders to ensure that some prohibited items, especially fentanyl and drugs, do not come into the United States. The the immediate past Prime Minister of Canada also made commitments, because they know U.S. is a big market for them. Incidentally, for Donald Trump, when he christened April 2nd at what he called Redemption Day, for him, that was a high point of his administration. He called it Redemption Day. And when he was reading it out, showing the tables at the press conference, it was clear where he was headed to. And virtually every country on earth was affected. And in fact, there was a particular country that had no inhabitants. And someone was saying, why include it? I listened to the Secretary of Commerce, U.S. Secretary of Commerce, saying, look, that there's a possibility that China may want to use that route to, bring in goods, because the key thing in tariff is the origin. The place of origin of a goods is very important, because if you get a goods from, for instance, China to Nigeria, and you now want to export it to the U.S., the origin will be redesignated as Nigeria. So virtually every country was affected. But the only countries that were not affected were countries that had what you could call tariff that were friendly. Like there are countries in Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, they had 10% tariff, and that was the same thing that the U.S. government said they should pay. But meanwhile, tariff has a history. When you talk about WTO, World Trade Organization, you recall after the Second World War, the U.S. wanted to support quiet economies across the world and they designed a framework under a General Trade and Tariff Agreement, GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, GATT. That was a precursor to WTO agreement. The idea was to help countries that were struggling to pull out of the post-war, challenges, especially countries in Southeast Asia and Europe. So that's actually the origin of tariff becoming, having such a global framework for engagement.
All right, that's well spoken. Now, let's quickly look at Nigeria now, because our major concern is Nigeria. We know there is diplomatic relationship between countries of the world, even though this tariff of a thing is trying to make that relationship not to be very strong. That's for some countries anyway. Let's look at Nigeria now as a country. What impact do you think this tariff is going to have on Nigeria? One thing is that Nigerians believe anything that comes from, some Nigerians, not all, believe anything that comes from outside Nigeria is superior to an extent. But then, looking at this tariff and the existing relationship between the United States and, of course, Nigeria, and the import and export aspect of it, because we're talking about trade here, what impact will all of these have on the Nigerian economy? Remember, the state of our economy right now. What impact do you think this tariff will have on the Nigerian economy?
Definitely it will have an impact. The volume of trade between Nigeria and United States, it's between $5 to $6 billion annually, and the implications are definitely will be quite enormous. More so, before now, under the American framework to support trade, African Trade and Trade Agreement, is called AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act, that was enacted by President Clinton. Went through President Clinton, President Bush, went on to amend it, to expand it to contain some products. And there were, I think, about 25 African countries that were covered by AGOA. AGOA simply means some category of goods got zero tariff when you import them to the U.S. The idea was to support Africa, support exports, support African economy. And by, I think, 15th May or thereabout, it's actually going to elapse after 20 years, because the first 10 years finished and it was extended. So what this tariff, this new executive order on tariff had done was to relegate these entire processes of having zero tariff on some products, craft, agricultural products, and what have you. So now, at the moment, import goods from the United States is at 27% tariff. So for Donald Trump, he's putting it at, I think, 17% for goods going from Nigeria to the United States. So what it means is it's going to hit hard on the economy. Everybody is aware in terms of, affecting the fundamentals of trade. But again, if you ask me, what should Nigeria be doing?
That's exactly the next question I wanted to ask.
Build mitigation. What is our mitigation plan? Because what countries do when such happens? You have about 3-4 layers of mitigation plan. One should be, you go into trade negotiation. And in fact, quite a lot of countries have done it. A couple of weeks ago, the Indian Prime Minister Modi returned to Washington, and it was on tariff. I mean, he had to come and speak because the trade between U.S. and India is huge. It's significantly huge, and Prime Minister Modi is aware of the impact. So he had to run back to Washington met Trump, engage in direct diplomatic engagement. And for me, that's a very effective way of doing it. I think about 2 weeks ago, the Italian Prime Minister, Meloni, she was also in Washington. Presidents across Europe, and they're all coming to plead their case, to find a renegotiation. Incidentally, under immediate past President Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria set up for the first time a full trade and trade negotiation office. So you now have a full office for trade negotiation. Incidentally, that office, I expect, should be up and running now, should be working round the clock, to ensure that they create a talking point for the foreign affairs minister, for the Nigerian president, Tinubu, to engage, because it's all about engagement. Go plead your case,
yes,
find a way around it, explore all the available diplomatic options. That's how these issues are sorted out.
Our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have actually been traveling. He has been visiting countries. He was in France. Now, do you think immediately after this incident, he was supposed to visit Washington like others, or you think there is still time to do that?
No, there's still time. And then you also have other top-level government officials who should do that, or who I believe should be on their toes. The Minister of Trade, Industry, Trade and Investment is the number one. She should be talking to her colleague in the U.S., the Trade Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, trying to get around it and say, look, let's find a way around it. You have the Director General of a Trade Negotiation Office, who should be on top of their game. You have even the Nigerian ambassador to World Trade Organization, that also falls within his purview. They should be on their toes, preparing briefings, preparing, talking point for the Nigerian president. You also have the U.S. ambassador in Nigeria, who his counterpart, the Nigerian foreign minister, should also be engaging, because it's all about engagement. That's how such issues are sorted out, because there's definitely no other options apart from engaging. As you're engaging, you also could be looking at how do we mitigate it. Are there other alternate, trading partners you can also find? For instance, I was listening to the South African trade minister speak about, between the U.S. and South Africa, you have a $500 million, agricultural produce that every year must happen between South Africa and from South Africa to the U.S. So they're already thinking, saying, what are the options we have? What other businesses can we get? How do we go around it and all that? So the point is this. If you ask me, in the U.S., the most important position, in terms of rating of ministers, or what you call secretaries, after the president, vice president, you have the Secretary of State. The next is the next in line is the minister of the person who is in charge of the economy, and the next is the trade minister. Trade minister is a very important, or commerce minister is a very important position. So I think the Nigerian government should go back to the drawing board and say, look, what other options, what other markets should we be looking at? What other areas, assuming negotiation fails? Because you must find alternate markets.
Yeah. That's well spoken. Now, looking at Donald Trump's leadership style, do you think there are other areas that Nigeria needs to make moves or take actions to mitigate? Do you think there are other things that you feel, because some persons have faulted his leadership style. Even in the United States, people hit the street in protest. You know, some went to court, the executive order, and a whole lot. And some persons are saying wise countries are already putting some measures together in case of anything. Because as it is right now, it is Americans first. And of course, apart from the fact that it is American first, there are other things that may not be favorable, other executive orders that may not be favorable to other countries. Do you think there are other areas apart from the trade that the Nigerian government needs to do something to mitigate or in form of a precaution?
Okay. If I work for the Nigerian government, the first thing I would have done is to follow the campaigns of, to follow Trump campaigns clearly, look at his talking points. The talking point during the campaign gives you an indication of what would likely be the color of an administration. And do an analysis of it, do a scenario analysis. I mean, I hope this was done. And if it was done, the first reaction was the pause on aid, development aid with the pause on the activities of USAID that was paused for 90 days, which is 3 months. And after that, the next thing, I mean, you saw that send reverberation across globally, because US incidentally is the lead in development aid to countries, most especially developing countries of the South, global South. And the impact was there. Following that, we also saw few decisions that happened in Europe where the aid money started, I mean, they were cutting down their budget on aid, on their budget on official development assistance. And UK, Norway, I mean, so what it simply means is that it's time to also look inward. We would need to do an introspection and say, look, how do we develop Nigeria without the other parts of the world?
That's it.
Yeah.
You just hit it for me. You just hit it.
We can move from there.
That's exactly what we need to do. I've had people on my program on Diplomatic Perspective that have said the same thing too. I think we need to look inwards. As a matter of fact, as a country, apart from what is happening from the international scene, we also need to look inwards because we need to get ready and prepare so hard so we're not taken unawares because anything can happen. Looking at what is happening, well, it's not far from trade war, as a matter of fact, but then let's see what happens after the suspension, the period of suspension. Thank you very much, Uzemana, for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, this is going to be the size of Diplomatic Perspective. Well, the tariff trade, the United States tariff trade is definitely going to have impact on the economy of many nations, including that of Nigeria. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for being part of the program today. A Diplomatic Perspective will come on your way again, same time, same station. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Ramsey Enoch. I will bye for now.